Why are you changing how you're presenting it rather than actually trying to balance the budget?
Are you guys going to be cooking the books?
I will say that. It's irresponsible.
Are you guys trying to cook the books? Well, MP Jasraj Holland saying the quiet part out loud. We discussed that story yesterday of kind of how they're representing the budget and how they're kind of moving things around. And well, Francois-Philippe Champagne gets called out on multiple occasions. We'll be covering that. And as well, you know, the jail not bail bill that the Conservatives put forward was struck down by the Liberals. And there's been all this conversation about, wow, what are we doing here? This is such a waste of time. But, you know, from both the left and the right, it's been really fascinating to watch. And we'll be breaking down those responses. But as well, there's some big stories happening as well in addition. And we'll be getting into all of that in just a little bit. But welcome to the Elevate Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. If you get any value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us to grow. It helps us to get to new audiences. And it helps people see that there's something different than what the mainstream media has to offer. And now let's get into our first story, shall we? Well, today's October 7th, and so there's a lot of stories happening today. First of which being what happened on October 7th in terms of the horrible atrocity that took place over in the Middle East. Again, can't be too specific because YouTube will get mad at me. But that happens today. So there's a lot of vigils on top of demonstrations and protests happening around our country today. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of news coming out of that and the violence that's going to appear out of that as we've been seeing that advertised leading up to it. So we'll be kind of keeping a close eye on all that situation. Secondly, Carney is meeting Trump today. And I don't think it's any mistake that Trump is meeting Carney on October 7th down at the White House today. So we'll see what comes of it. There's a lot of conversations about it. Will we get a deal? Is there any movement going on in those conversations? We'll see. We'll be covering that story on our afternoon segment to see what the fallout is and what that whole result of that meeting happens to be. And third is, well, Freedom Convoy figures Tamara Lich and Chris Barber are to be sentenced today. So again, these are things that are kind of top of mind right now that are happening on today specifically, which we will be getting into in our afternoon episode. So please come back for that episode. But today, this morning, we're going to be talking about the fact that, you know, the fallout of what's been going on with the Jail Not Bail Act being struck down by the Liberals and not really wanting to give the Conservatives a win on this one. And there's a lot of conversations around it right now in particular. So right now, there's a lot of debate happening around this bill. Bill C-242, an act to amend the Criminal Code and the Department of Justice Act, the nickname being the Jail Not Bail Act. And it was a very severe bill, and rightfully so. We've been seeing a lot of nonsense happening in our communities, a lot of people getting away with things that they shouldn't be getting away with. And so this is a fairly heavy-handed bill to crack down on those things. And so what typically has been the argument back on this bill is the fact it's a little too heavy-handed. You know, we have to take in consideration this might be infringing on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And this comes back to the revolving conversation that's happened about this all the time and time again. You have people who commit atrocities in our country, whether they be from here or they've come in from abroad and committing crimes, and they're able to hide behind our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We have no carve-outs for really dealing with a lot of this stuff. It's just kind of like, well, we don't want to infringe on their rights. I'm sorry, you murdered somebody. You have no rights. Sorry to say, that's kind of how this works. But that's typically not the liberal way of doing things. And even so, it's even baked into our criminal code. I believe it's section 718 of our criminal code that essentially talks about the mitigating factors and aggravating circumstances that typically can happen in cases. Essentially, this portion of our criminal code is often used for people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, who have had a hard life, some would say, and that is actually can be used and brought into the courtroom to acknowledge that, before sentencing, consider this. Consider what they've been through, considering their background, this, that, the other, considering that they may have come from poverty, come from a tough family life. These are the things that kind of are mitigating circumstances that can get brought into the courtroom and actually affect someone's sentencing. And this is kind of the mentality that gets actually baked into our criminal code in general. In a high trust society, this isn't necessarily it makes sense. However, when things have gotten so brutal and so terrible, well, now people are using these laws to do terrible things and then just come up with these random mitigating circumstances and be like, I did it because of this, I did it because of that, and the person looked at me wrong. these are some things that can tend to get brought up. These are issues that this bill was trying to address and trying to actually clamp down on people who are committing crimes over and over and over again. You know, there's a 2-strike rule presented in this bill. Like, okay, you get bail once, you do it again, well, you're staying in jail until you are fully sentenced. Like this is what this bill is talking about. But that was the conversation. That was the issue. That was the debate. It's like, well, this is kind of American style law that you're bringing to Canada. This is infringing on people's rights. All of a sudden, again, comes back down to the same argument these liberals will bring up, is the person who's committed the crime has more rights than the person that they've committed it against. And that's the issue. So this bill was brought up and it was struck down, and that was a lot of debate in the conversation. And there's a bit of a back and forth between Pierre Poilievre and Sean Fraser on this very issue. This was an interesting back and forth.
Be safe and to feel safe in their communities. Over the course of the recent federal election campaign, we made several commitments to help reform Canada's bail system and to advance stronger penalties for those who commit serious offences against their fellow Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we are willing to work across the aisle with other members to ensure we put forward reforms that are informed by evidence, not ones that are seemingly copied and pasted from American-style bail laws. Mr. Speaker, it's only going to be a matter of weeks before we advance new legislation to strengthen criminal justice reforms in this country. I hope all members from all parties support us.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I met with the head of the Peel Regional Police Union, along with a group of crime victims. Among them was the Faruqi family. Alim Faruqi rose at night to protect his kids from a home invader, was shot in the throat. He's dead. His brother came out and said the Liberal government should be ashamed of itself for keeping in place Liberal bail that has allowed for 1,600 crimes every single day. We have a motion before the House to get rid of Liberal bail and restore safety to our streets. Will the Prime Minister let it pass?
Hear, hear. Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, obviously, when such violent circumstances arise in communities across the country, it's incumbent upon members of Parliament on both sides of the aisle to condemn them unreservedly. I would remind my honourable colleague some of the laws that he points to in his many promises, including ones pertaining to self-defence, were in fact put into Canada's laws when the Conservatives left held power while Stephen Harper was Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition was in his cabinet. Mr. Speaker, moving forward, Conservatives, Liberals and others will see some of the strongest reforms being put in place when it comes to changing the bail system in this country and when it comes to adopting stiffer sentences for serious crimes.
That's the debate that's currently happening. And people often wonder, what's the issue? This is the argument that the Liberals come up with. Well, you've copied and pasted American-style laws and bringing them here. That's because it's needed for the first time in this country because of the atrocities that have been committed by the Liberal Party in terms of the immigration issues, the housing issues. And when people are feeling insecure about their borders, they're feeling insecure about if they can buy a home, they're feeling insecure about they're feeling food insecure. Well, crime is shortly to follow after that. And that's what we're currently witnessing. And then even when that crime is being committed, people aren't being taken care of in terms of putting those people behind bars. So Liberals haven't been doing anything about it, so the Conservatives have been putting the pressure on. They're like, okay, fine. Here's a bill. Can we all agree this is bad, and can we get on with it? Liberals say, nah, irresponsible. But this is the politics of it, right? Is the Liberals are actually planning their own bail reform that they're looking to bring forward. It's taking forever, but they're looking to do it. And they do not want to give the Conservatives a win on this one. So whatever the Conservatives bring forward, even if it was the most nuanced, thought-provoking, well-reasoned bill ever that anyone's ever seen. It could even be like an ideological liberal bill. Still would have been, we don't want to give you guys credit. This is politics in Canada. People are really frustrated about it. We've seen it from the left and the right. The left is like, oh, you guys are idiots. Clearly, liberals are going to do something about it. That's not clear because they've had 10 years to do it and they haven't. So we're wondering when that's going to happen. And then the right is also saying, why would the Conservatives even waste their time doing this, knowing it doesn't get struck down, knowing the Liberals aren't going to play ball? There's so many other things to worry about. My friends, when I hear the Conservatives and people on the right hand of the aisle complaining about that, I often wonder if you know how our system works. Conservatives aren't in power. All they can do is bring bills forward and then vehemently push them in Parliament to make the argument to push and corner the governing party into accepting it with public pressure. That's really all they can do if they don't have enough votes to get things passed. So I don't really understand how this is the Conservatives' problem. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing here. But the Liberals are like, we got our own thing. We're going to do our own thing. And we know that's going to be layered with all kinds of issues, I'm sure, especially knowing it's coming from Sean Fraser, who doesn't have a great track record with any portfolio he's ever touched. So we'll see where this goes. But we'll be keeping a close eye on it and keeping a very close eye on the fact that we'll see what the Liberals actually bring to the table. It'll be interesting. But we move on to François-Philippe Champagne. We talked about this yesterday. You remember the budget's coming November 4th, big day, November 4th. They announced it, and then the whole conversation was around operating expenses. We're going to be decreasing operating expenses and increasing in capital expenses, meaning we're going to be spending less and investing more. But we've been hearing how they've been obscuring some of the budget. They're actually changing how they're going to be presenting the budget, leaving many wondering, what are you going to be doing? Mark Carney did something similar in the UK. So we're likely to be going to be seeing that here now. And the Conservatives, the opposition party, had some questions about that to François-Philippe Champagne. Mr. Jasraj Holland had some questions about that. Well, François wasn't too happy about it.
Like you said in your statement, you want to make operational spending, whatever that is, and balance it in 3 years. The Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, tried this failed experiment in the UK last year. It failed horribly, and now you guys are trying to try the same accounting trick here in Canada. When at the end of the day, the bottom line is still the bottom line. I'll quote the PBO and what he's saying for your claims about splitting it between operating and capital costs. The PBO said, we haven't seen a clear definition of what would fall into capital and would fall into operating. He further said about your operating budget that we currently don't have a definition of operating budget. He went on to say something very alarming. The bottom line of the government will not change, which means debt is still debt at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how many columns you try to present in front of Canadians and try to trick them. He went on to say the international public sector standards that everyone uses to measure the deficit and levels of debt will not change. The first reason that won't change is those are the accounting standards. The second reason is the ratings agencies won't let you change it. That's the first thing they're going to go to. And if they have a sniff that somehow there's a change in presentation, you bet your boots that we're going to be paying more for debt pretty quickly. So you guys are going to try the same failed experiment that Mark Carney advised the UK government on just last year. So are you guys going to be cooking the books, trying to trick Canadians with these tricky accounting practices, or both?
I think, Madam Chair, it's irresponsible for a member of Parliament to use language like that. I will say that. It's irresponsible. Because the member knows full well that we're not replacing anything, we're adding. This is a new lens for people at home to understand.
Would the minister agree debt is debt?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to listen to his question, but if I'm not allowed to respond to the same time, I've been a minister for quite some time in this House. Normally, I have the same time than the colleague.
That's why it's not a new government.
Canadians deserve to correct the record because that was an irresponsible statement.
Minister. And
what a statement. I'm sorry. That's what I just caught that now. I didn't catch that the first time watching through this. Yeah, I've been a minister a long time in this House. And they said, indeed, you have. It's not a new government. Holy jumping. This is what we've been seeing a lot of in terms of the presentation of this budget is François-Philippe Champagne showed up in committee and gave a lot of these types of answers. This is the one time he was a little frazzled, big, whoa, that's irresponsible. You can't be putting that on me. You're now assuming my intentions. And it's like, well, we're adding new things. No, you're not adding anything. You are literally shifting things around, and you've told us you're shifting things around in order to present it a different way. Like, this is a tale as old as time. But this has continued the circular argument they continue to make in Parliament, in committee. And that's what we're seeing here. And it continued even more egregiously with MP Sandra Cobain questioning him in committee as well on how this budget's actually going to work. And this was a fascinating back and forth as well.
How you present the budget, rather than changing your reckless spending so that on a net basis, you actually balance it.
Well, you should ask yourself why you voted against measures that support Canadians. I think people watching at home would be surprised to see your voting records and say you voted against measures that would make their life more easy.
Very simple answer. I really want you to answer my question. Why are you changing how you're presenting it rather than actually trying to balance the budget?
I think Canadians are entitled to transparency. In a frank discussion between you and I think your husband and your family and everyone in your riding is entitled to have more transparency to see the budgeting, where their tax dollars going to be used. I think this is about clarity, transparency.
I agree. Transparency is a good thing. But every single person in my riding does not get to rework their budget to see if it looks better at month end. The bottom line is the bottom line. Yep. If you don't have money, you don't have money. Why are you changing how you're presenting the budget instead of actually balancing it?
So the bottom line is the bottom line, but I think you cannot be against giving more information to Canadians. People want to know where their money is going. Is it for expenses or investment?
The result is the same.
Is the deficit going to be higher than under your government and Mr. Carney's government compared to Trudeau's?
You should be informing your constituent that we have the lowest deficit to GDP ratio in the G7.
Minister, please.
No, but
I'm
that
asking
really
a very
matters.
simple question. Is it going to be higher
That really
than
matters.
Trudeau's or not?
I would say you need to compare our fiscal position with the other G7 country because Canadians look at that. Our colleagues,
Minister,
the bond rating agency.
numbers don't change. It's black and white. I come from the financial sector. Is it going to be higher than Trudeau's or lower than Trudeau's?
I know you come from the financial sector, and that's why I'm happy you're on the finance committee, but you wouldn't know because you're a very smart...
The filibustering is wild, isn't it? And also the gaslighting, too. And to invoke this woman's family is egregious and disgusting on so many levels in order to filibuster and not answer the question. The question was simple. Why are you choosing to change how the budget is presented versus trying to balance the budget? That's a pretty straight question that we all want answers to. Well, it's better for transparency, guys. Like it's all what? No. Okay, fine. You don't want to answer that question. Clearly, that was asked 3 or 4 times. Well, let's then ask this question then. Is your deficit going to be higher or lower than Trudeau's? You have to look at how we're doing against all the other countries. Oh my gosh. This is why people are frustrated with politics and they're losing hope in the system because they see situations like this where they are going to outright lie to your face, tax you to bits, and laugh in the process. And try to tell you, oh, this is the better way. Presenting the budget this way is so much better for transparency. Holy smokes. Okay, how about this? When a business is not doing well, let's take the Bay, for example, since you guys ruined that institution. Let's take the Bay. Before they went out of business, they get into a meeting with their stakeholders. Hey, it doesn't look like we're doing too well here. We're seeing you guys are increasing your deficit. You're not making a whole lot of money. We're not moving as much product as we were. What's going on here? Well, there's some other things that we got to look at. So we ended up hiring more people, but that's an investment in our future. So that's a capital investment, right? I know we bought more product that we haven't moved yet, but the more product is good because our stock rooms are going to be full. It means our floor is nice and full. So it makes it look like it's a more lively environment. That is a capital investment. So we're actually investing a lot more to see that upside go higher. Our operating expenses actually lowering. We're actually we're being more responsible with the money now. And since we're investing so much more in the company, we're actually going to see an upward trajectory going forward. So don't worry about it, man. Don't worry. And even that example I'm giving you is more transparency than actually would be happening and that they're giving us. Because that actually wouldn't happen. They just say, hey, we're actually increasing. We did this, this, and this. We're investing more. We're going to make more money in the future. It's all good. We're actually decreasing how much we're spending in terms of our day-to-day operations. So judging based on this financial picture, we'll be just fine. And then those stakeholders start breaking away the books and start saying, whoa, you've actually moved this line item under capital expenses. You moved this under capital expenses. This was an operational. Wait, actually, how much are we actually spending and how much are we burning? And are we actually getting any money back? Are we going to be making any money? That's how things would go in a boardroom and you'd be fired immediately for doing it. So why is it okay to do it as a politician running a country? Oh, it's because you're trying to make room for Brookfield and make more money and buy yourself more time. It's sketchy as all out, dude. Sketchy as all out. But anyways, we'll be seeing what goes on the rest of today. A lot of big news, as I said, Mark Carney, Donald Trump, the convoy sentencing, as well as the vigils and protests that are happening across the country on this specific day. There's a lot to cover this afternoon. Join me then, but have yourselves a good one. I'm out.